The wagon wheels creaked louder than thunder on that cold morning, though not a soul spoke a word. The mist hung heavy over the pines, wrapping the forest like a wet shroud. Sitting quietly in the back of the wagon was Evelyn Whitmore, wrapped in a hand-stitched shawl that had once belonged to her mother. Her hands trembled not from the cold, but from something far more familiar now, fear. They said they were taking her to the healer in town. Sod maybe he could help her with her condition, but Evelyn wasn't a fool. She'd heard the way her sister-in-law hissed the word barren like it was a curse. She'd seen the way the rest of the Whitmore family looked at her since Daniel, her husband, had passed in that logging accident last spring. As if Evelyn were a reminder of something broken. As if her empty womb made her less than a woman. Still, she'd hoped. The wagon pulled to a stop where the forest thinned and a creek cut gently through a clearing. Her brother-in-law, Harlan, jumped down and reached out a hand, not kindly. Evelyn stared, unsure. "This is where you get off," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. She blinked. "What? This isn't the healer's place." Harlan's lip twitched. "No, it ain't." From the front, Martha, her sister-in-law, called coldly, "You've got food in that basket and a good coat. We left you near water. You'll be fine?" Evelyn felt her throat close. "You can't mean to leave me here ... not like this." Martha turned, her eyes hard. "You think you deserve our roof after bringing shame to Daniel's name? After giving us nothing in return? You're a burden, Evelyn. Always have been." A sharp pain pierced Evelyn's chest. She clutched the edge of the wagon, words lost on her tongue. Harlan tossed her small satchel into the dirt and with a grunt helped her down, not out of kindness, but to be done with it. The moment her boots touched the earth, the wagon rolled forward. Evelyn stumbled after it. "Please, Martha. At least let me explain." But the wagon didn't slow. It moved like a judgment, a sentence rendered. In moments, it was swallowed by the fog. She stood there long after the sound of wheels faded, gripping her shawl, eyes staring into the nothingness. The wind picked up, gentle but sharp, rustling through the pines like whispers of forgotten prayers. It began to snow. Evelyn wandered deeper into the trees, following the creek's edge. She couldn't remember how long she walked. Her boots soaked through, and her limbs grew numb. Hours passed, or perhaps just moments that felt like hours. She didn't know anymore. She found a mossy rock beneath a tall pine, its branches stretched like arms trying to hold her. She sat, cradling her knees. Her shawl barely shielded her from the cold creeping into her bones. A robin hopped nearby, pecking at the frost. She watched it absently, tears welling and spilling without sobs. She had no strength left for crying out loud. She thought of Daniel, his laugh, the way he once called her Evie girl while placing his hand gently over her stomach, dreaming of children they never had. She'd tried, my God, how she'd tried. Every herbal brew, every prayer by the fire, every month filled with hope and then despair. The cruel whispers at church. The way Martha smirked whenever a neighbor announced another baby. Evelyn had endured it all with quiet grace. But now, even grace couldn't warm her. She leaned her head against the trunk of the pine and closed her eyes. Snow began to settle in her hair like a bridal veil. The cold kissed her cheeks, her fingers stiffened. Her breathing slowed. And just as sleep or death began to pull her under. There were footsteps. Crack. A twig snapped. She didn't stir. She couldn't. Then a small voice whispering, "Is she dead?" Another voice sharper, "Shh, Maisie. Don't poke her." Someone knelt close. She felt warmth, not just physical warmth, but something softer, like a presence. "She's breathing." Barely. A third voice murmured, older, more careful. Hands small, calloused, wrapped something over her shoulders. A woolen blanket. Then came the scent of pine, wood smoke. "And bread?" "She's cold as stone," whispered a girl. "We gotta bring her back," said a boy's voice. "Papa always said don't leave someone to freeze." "She's heavy," Maisie whined. "Then we drag her." Like when we moved that log last week. There was a pause. Then determination. "Build the sled. Now." Evelyn drifted in and out of darkness, unaware of the children who lifted her onto a wooden frame tied with rope. Unaware of the silent teamwork as they pulled her over frozen roots and through snowdrifts. She didn't feel the way the smallest girl, Maisie, held her hand the entire journey. She didn't hear the children whispering about angels. She only knew that somewhere, in the deep, aching void she floated in, there was a flicker of warmth again. By the time the cabin came into view, hidden behind cedar thickets and built by rough, loving hands, night had fallen. Smoke rose from its crooked chimney. A lantern glowed from the window. The eldest, Jack, pushed open the door while the others hurried inside, hauling Evelyn with them. They placed her on a bed of straw, wrapped her in quilts stitched by their mother long ago. Ivy, the second oldest, began heating broth over the stove. Noah fetched a rag soaked in warm water to wipe the frost from Evelyn's cheeks. Maisie climbed beside her and whispered, "Don't die, please." And somewhere deep inside, Evelyn heard that tiny voice. A promise stirred in her soul. She did not die. The cabin stood in a clearing etched into the forest like a secret kept close. Logs, roughly hewn by their late father's hands, formed the walls. Moss had begun to creep up from the foundation, and ivy slithered along the southern side, but the chimney still smoked faithfully. That warmth inside that fragile, flickering ember of life was the only thing that held the children together. The four siblings had lived alone in those woods since the accident. Jack, at 14, carried the weight of a man without yet shedding the softness of a boy. He swung the axe like he had something to prove. His hands were rough, his shoulders squared, his jaw set, but in the quiet moments, his eyes searched the trees for answers no one had ever taught him. Ivy, 12, was the voice of calm. She cooked, cleaned, bandaged wounds, and read from the old Bible their father had left behind. Where Jack built fires, Ivy made peace. Noah, 9, spoke little but saw everything. He carved animals from whittled sticks and could track deer through snow as well as any hunter. His silence wasn't fear. It was focus. And then there was Maisie, 6, the heart of the house. Her hair curled in tangled ringlets, often streaked with mud or jam. She still believed in angels and sang lullabies to the chickens. They had no adults, no one to ask permission or read bedtime stories. Just each other, and the forest that surrounded them like a living guardian. They had been surviving, not living. Until Evelyn came. Jack kept his distance when they first brought the strange woman inside. He'd seen enough of the world to know that adults brought pain. They lied or left or demanded things you couldn't give. "She'll wake up and leave us," he told Ivy that first night. "Just like everyone else." Ivy shook her head. "You didn't see her, Jack. She was almost gone. Something put her in our path." "I think," her voice dropped, "I think God sent her." Jack snorted. "Don't go starting in on miracles." Again. But Ivy didn't argue. She just tucked another blanket around the woman and wiped the frost from her hair. The next morning, Evelyn stirred. Her lips parted with a dry breath. Her throat cracked with the weight of sleep. When she opened her eyes, she didn't know where she was, only that the smell of wood smoke filled the air, and a child's humming came from somewhere nearby. She turned her head and found Maisie, sitting cross-legged on the floor, singing to a stuffed rabbit with a button for an eye. "Good mornin'," Maisie chirped when she noticed. "You were frozen, like a rock." Evelyn blinked, trying to sit up. Maisie scampered off. "Jack, she's awake." In seconds, the other children flooded the room. Ivy pressed a warm mug into Evelyn's hands. "It's pine needle tea." Helps. With fever. Jack stood near the door, arms crossed, suspicious, quiet, watching. Evelyn's lips trembled. Where am I? Our cabin, Ivy said gently. Papa built it, Noah nodded. We found you by the creek. You were barely breathing. We brought you here. Evelyn's hands tightened around the mug. Why? Noah shrugged. 'Cause you were dying. Over the next few days, Evelyn began to understand what had happened and who these remarkable children were. Their father, Thomas Archer, had been one of the best lumberjacks in the territory. Everyone said he could fell a tree with 3 swings and haul timber on his back like a mule. Their mother had died 2 winters earlier from fever. Their father passed after a tree collapsed during a storm, crushed beneath what he loved most. The children never told anyone. No orphanage. No town. Authority. They'd split us up, Jack said flatly when Evelyn asked. Put Maisie in some house in the city. Ivy too. Me and Noa'd be sent off to work like mules. Evelyn felt a lump in her throat. She had no children of her own. But somehow, in this remote clearing, God had placed 4 into her arms. Despite Jack's suspicions, Evelyn offered to help. She stirred broth, mended torn shirts, patched the roof, and taught the children to fold their blankets tightly. She knew how to bind books and bake from scratch. She'd learned because she'd always imagined she'd be a mother. Even if she never had a child of her own, she had studied what it meant. To nurture Dot in the days that followed, she and Ivy planted winter greens in wooden boxes. Noah showed her how to skin a rabbit, and Evelyn taught him how to dry herbs for healing. Even Jack, though quiet, began to watch her closely. One evening, a storm rolled through Dot. The wind howled like wolves across the clearing. The children huddled close by the fire. The cabin creaked and groaned, rain beating down like fists. Evelyn held Maisie in her lap, rocking her gently. Tell us a story, Ivy said. Please. Evelyn smiled, brushing hair from Ivy's brow. All right. But only if Jack doesn't mind, Jack grunted. Fine, so long as it ain't about princesses. She laughed softly. Not a princess. A tree, Maisie blinked. A tree? Yes, a tree that grew in a place no one ever looked, surrounded by shadows. Everyone thought it would wither, but it didn't. It grew roots so deep that even storms couldn't shake it. It was lonely, but strong. Ivy whispered, like us. Evelyn nodded, just like you. Jack said nothing. But for the first time, he didn't look away. In the quiet nights that followed, Evelyn began to feel something strange take root in her chest. Not just gratitude. Not even hope. Something deeper. The kind of love that didn't require blood or birth. A love forged by fire, by cold mornings and shared bread and whispered bedtime stories. She had always thought motherhood was something that happened to you. Now she knew. Sometimes you chose it. Sometimes it chose you. Then came the day. She asked the question, do you want me to stay? It was after dinner. She and Ivy had washed the dishes. Jack chopped firewood, Noah carved a wooden fox, and Maisie picked wildflowers. All 4 froze. Evelyn held her breath. Maisie ran and clung to her skirt. Yes, Ivy whispered. Please don't go. Noah nodded. Silently, Jack said nothing for a long while. Then, finally, he set down his axe and looked her in the eyes. You can stay. Evelyn knelt in the dirt. I won't take your papa's place, or your mama's, but if you'll have me, I'll be what I can. I'll fight for you, feed you, teach you. Jack didn't speak, but he stepped forward and placed something in her hand, a wooden carving, a pine tree. From that moment, Evelyn was no longer just a guest in the cabin. She was part of it. She was their anchor, their warmth, their quiet protector. And though the winds of trouble were beginning to stir in town, for now in that forest something beautiful had begun. a new family, born not of blood but of love. Morning sunlight trickled through the frost-laced window pane like soft golden fingers, stirring life within the little cabin deep in the woods. It danced across the wooden floorboards, kissed the kettle's metal lid, and finally landed on the threadbare quilt that covered Evelyn's legs. She stirred, stretching gently. Her body was still sore, but no longer weak. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the children found her near the stream and dragged her to this hidden haven. And in that time, Evelyn had learned something she never thought she'd know again. Peace. The cabin had a scent of pine resin and stew, earthy and comforting. Every corner bore the marks of childhood resilience. Ivy's half-sewn dresses draped over the rafters, Noah's wooden carvings resting on windowsills, Maisie's messy crayon scribbles taped proudly to the walls. Jack's axe leaned by the door like a sentinel, guarding his siblings and perhaps now Evelyn too. She rose, tying her apron, and fed kindling to the hearth. As the fire flared, she closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. This cabin didn't just house children, it held life, fragile and beautiful. And she was part of it now. In the early hours, she moved quietly. She fixed the torn patch on Noah's coat. She refilled the herb jars Ivy organized. She stirred a pot of porridge seasoned with cinnamon she had found buried in her satchel. Her body ached, but her heart felt light. Each task had purpose. Each breath had worth. Jack was the first to wake, as always. He stepped out into the yard, with his axe over one shoulder, blonde hair tousled, jaw tight. He didn't say much, never did. But when he passed Evelyn on the porch, he gave her a brief nod. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. Ivy came next, sleeves rolled up, hair braided and ready to take over the day's work. She had the bearing of a girl twice her age, tough, yet tender. "You should rest more, Miss Evelyn," she said, setting down a bucket of laundry. "I rested enough to last me a lifetime." Evelyn replied with a smile, pulling the quilted clothesline taut. "Let me earn my place." "You've already earned it," Ivy whispered, almost too quietly. Breakfast brought laughter. Noah tried to sneak extra butter onto his cornbread and got scolded by Ivy. Maisie spilled milk, then burst into tears, only to be pulled onto Evelyn's lap and soothed with a lullaby. Jack returned with splinters in his palms and a fresh rabbit over his shoulder. They ate together like a family. It didn't matter that they weren't one by law or blood. They were tied by shared mornings, warm firelight, and silent understanding. As days turned into weeks, Evelyn began restoring more than just herself. She restored the rhythm of the home. She taught Ivy how to boil herbs for salves and stitches. She read aloud from the tattered books on the shelf, bringing worlds to life, pirates on the high seas, girls in secret gardens, brave knights who protected those they loved. She showed Noah how to preserve food by smoking fish and drying meat. He didn't speak, but he watched closely and mimicked every move with quiet determination. She helped Jack balance the ledger their father had started, counting flour sacks, rabbit pelts, nails, and thread. Jack hated math, but he didn't protest when she helped. Sometimes he even smirked when she teased him for bad handwriting. Maisie, though, was the shadow at Evelyn's heels. She followed her everywhere, mimicking her hums, asking endless questions. One night, Maisie tugged Evelyn's sleeve. "You're like Mama, only softer." Evelyn nearly wept, but even joy has its shadows. One evening, Evelyn sat alone by the fire. Her hands were busy knitting, but her mind wandered. She watched the flames flicker and heard echoes from her old life, the weight of silence in the Whitmore house, the cutting words of Martha, the look of pity in town women's eyes when she passed by without a child at her side. For years, she had believed her worth was measured by what she could give by babies she never bore, by expectations she never met. But in this cabin, with these children, something different was taking root. not a child of flesh and blood, but something equally precious. Love born from kindness. Love without condition. The next day brought the snow. A thick storm swept through the woods, burying the paths in white silence. Jack stayed in to sharpen tools. Ivy baked pies from dried apples. Evelyn made hot cider. In the cozy warmth of the cabin, Evelyn decided to start a tradition. A proper hearth needs a hearth book, she said, pulling out an old notebook she found in the pantry. Some place to write stories and thoughts, to remember who we are. She handed it to Ivy, who beamed. They wrote together that night. Maisie drew a tree. Noah drew a fox. Jack refused to write, but he carved a cover for it with leaves and their initials, J-I-N-M-E, Jack. Ivy, Noah, Maisie, Evelyn. Then came a new worry. Ivy confessed it while sewing. We're almost out of salt and flour. If we ration, it'll last 2 weeks. Evelyn frowned. We'll need to go to town. Jack's head snapped up. No, she understood his fear. Town meant questions, suspicion, danger. I'll go, she said softly. Alone? Jack scowled. You don't owe us that. Evelyn reached for his hand. You saved me. Let me return the favor. The next morning, she bundled up and made the journey on foot through thick woods, her step sure. When she reached the town of Maple Hollow, heads turned. Is that Evelyn Whitmore? I heard she vanished. What's she doing with a wagon of rabbit pelts? She ignored the whispers, straightened her spine, and traded furs and herbs for supplies. The shopkeeper, an old friend of Daniel's, stared at her. Heard some say you died. I lived, she replied simply. Better than I ever have. He nodded slowly. Good. But not everyone was kind. A hunter saw her near the edge of town, loading sacks into a sled. He narrowed his eyes. Where have you been living, Miss Whitmore? Folks don't just vanish and come back looking stronger. Evelyn didn't answer, and the man rode off. When she returned to the cabin, Jack met her at the tree line. You were followed. Evelyn nodded. We have to prepare for what they didn't yet know. But trouble had caught their scent. Still, the cabin felt warmer that night. The children clung tighter to her arms. And Evelyn felt no regret. She'd gone to town a castaway once. Now she returned as a mother. One late night, as snowflakes danced outside, Jack knocked on her door. I finished something, he said awkwardly, handing her a bundle. It was a wooden frame carved with trees, stars, and the word home. Inside, the first page of the hearth book. A family portrait sketched by Ivy. Evelyn, Jack, Ivy, Noah, and Maisie. Smiling. Together. A family rebuilt. The sun rose slowly over the deep woods, and with it came a subtle shift in the world around Evelyn. She had come to love the simple, tender life the children had shared with her. Milo, Clara, Finn, and Elsie, each with their own quirks and rhythms. But that morning, Evelyn stirred with a sense of anticipation she couldn't explain. The previous night, she had sat by the fire with Clara brushing her hair, Finn reading aloud from a tattered book they had found in an abandoned cabin, and Milo whittling small birds from pine wood. Evelyn had whispered, I never knew what home meant until now. But the children grew quiet. Elsie finally said in her small, trembling voice, We always knew you wouldn't stay forever. Evelyn had laughed softly, brushing it off, but the look in their eyes stayed with her through the night. Now, as morning light spilled through the windows, she found Clara already awake, braiding her hair with a red ribbon. Milo was sharpening his axe, though no trees needed felling. They were waiting. For what? Evelyn didn't know yet. After breakfast, a meal of fried mushrooms, leftover rabbit stew, and toasted pine nuts. Milo pulled a crumpled envelope from the pocket of his worn coat. He handed it to her without a word. It was sealed with wax. An old mark. a symbol Evelyn recognized, her family's crest. Her hand shook as she opened it. Evelyn, if you're alive and reading this, we were wrong. I was wrong. Please, come home. The manor is empty without you. Your father's health has worsened. Your mother cries for you at night. We've seen how we failed you. Please forgive us. We don't deserve it. But we hope. Signed, Margaret Bellyhurst, her sister. The woods seemed to tilt. Evelyn sat down slowly, her breath caught between disbelief and a strange ache in her chest. Who brought this? She asked. Finn raised his hand. I found the courier at the fork trail. He said he was looking for a Lady Bellyhurst who vanished years ago. Sounded like you. Evelyn looked around the cabin. She had no children of her own, but in this forest, among these wild, fierce, abandoned little souls, she had found a love deeper than blood. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Clara, quiet and older than her years, said, You always told us we have choices. Maybe now it's your turn. That evening, Evelyn walked the edge of the forest. A storm was building in the distance, thunder rumbling faintly like the voice of fate. The children followed her. They came to the place where the courier had left, a crossroad. One path to the manor and everything that had hurt her. One path back to the little wooden cabin in the forest of freedom. I can't leave you, she said to the children. But maybe you're not leaving, Milo said gently. Maybe you're just carrying us with you. Evelyn looked at them. Finn with his storybooks. Elsie with her clumsy hands and gentle smile. Clara with eyes that saw through lies. Milo, the boy who had never asked for a mother, but let her become one. She nodded. I'll go, just for a few days to see. To ask them why. And we'll be here, Elsie whispered, gripping her hand. Waiting. Evelyn set off the next morning. The journey to Bellyhurst Manor was long. Each step away from the woods felt like peeling away bark from skin. But Evelyn walked with a spine straighter than it had ever been. When she arrived, the manor loomed like a ghost from a life she barely remembered. Ivy curled around the stone columns. The gates were open. Inside, it smelled like lavender and silence. She found her mother in the garden, bent and older than she remembered. Her father on a carved bench, barely able to lift his eyes. Margaret ran to her. No one said anything at first, just tears and touches and apologies. Why now? Evelyn asked. Because we finally realized, Margaret said, that your worth was never tied to your womb. You are our daughter, our sister, not some vessel. Her mother knelt beside her. We thought tradition mattered more. We were so wrong. Can you ever forgive us? Evelyn looked at her family. She saw broken people trying to change. She thought of the forest, of Milo's stubborn courage, Clara's patience, Elsie's laughter, Finn's stories. Forgiveness, Evelyn said, isn't easy. But maybe, if you let me show you who I became, maybe we can begin again. The Bellyhurst estate had never seen such visitors as it did 2 weeks later. Milo came in with a shirt too big and boots too worn. Clara carried a basket of dried herbs. Finn rode in a wooden cart Evelyn had found. Elsie clung to Evelyn's hand. Meet my family, Evelyn said, standing tall. They saved me when I was thrown away, and now I want them to see the world they were never given. Her mother wept again. Her father whispered something for the first time in months. Thank you. And that evening, as the children explored the estate, Evelyn lit a fire in the grand hearth. She sat in the chair once reserved for her grandmother, and the children sat around her. She told them a story about a girl who was left behind because she couldn't bear children, but who became a mother to the forgotten. The cabin was no longer silent. Laughter now lived in its walls. Smoke curled from the chimney, smelling not just of pine wood but of baked bread and rabbit stew. Once a hollow shell of survival, the lumberjack family's home had become something else entirely warm, lived in, glowing, and it was because of her Anna, the woman they found shivering in the snow, the one the world called barren, the one they once thought was broken, but now? She was mama to 6 wild, scarred, stubborn, and loving children to a house that once knew only chores and silence to a man who never thought his heart would dare speak again. And as the spring melted the last frost, Anna found herself planting seeds in soil she never thought she'd own. Literal and metaphorical. 1. Spring dawned softly, the forest slowly transformed. Icicles wept themselves into puddles. The trees yawned open with new buds. The wind that used to bite now danced across the porch like a forgotten tune remembered. Anna stood at the front stoop one morning, blanket around her shoulders, a cup of tea in her hands. Behind her, the cabin creaked as the children stirred. She heard them stretching, the thump of small feet hitting wooden floors, and Ewan's deep voice calling them to wash before breakfast. Home. Anna closed her eyes. She had never known it before not. Really, now she did, and as Ewan stepped outside behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder, she leaned into him without a word. They both watched the woods for a while, then Anna whispered, "I think we're ready." 2. The official wedding Ewan hadn't asked formally, not in words, not even once. But Anna had already worn her vows in the small things, the way she brushed the boy's hair before church, the way she stitched Jamie's torn overalls, the way she kissed Ewan's temple when he came home smelling of sawdust. Still, the town needed a name. The town needed a ring. So they stood one Sunday afternoon in front of the small chapel tucked near the edge of the valley. Pastor Bell spoke the words, and the children, cleaned and dressed in mismatched finery, stood behind them like a small army of love. Ewan said, "I do." Anna said, "I already have." And the town that once whispered behind hands about the barren woman and the widowed recluse now clapped until their palms were raw. 3. Cradle that sings. Anna still couldn't carry children of her own, but her arms were never empty. Each morning, little hands reached for her. Each night, small heads laid against her lap as she read tales of dragons and cabins, of brave orphans and women who healed broken families. The children changed too. Jamie, once feral and distrustful, now held his younger siblings' hands when they crossed the stream. Elsie sang songs while baking. Tiny Tom drew pictures and gave her the crumpled pages like they were gold leaf. One day, Anna found something on the windowsill, a small wooden carving. A woman. In her arms 6 tiny children. On the back, etched by hand, "Roots deeper than blood." Anna wept, her tears watering the rose bush that now bloomed outside the window. 4. Her old family returns. The knock on the cabin door came in summer. Anna was baking. The children were picking berries. She opened it with flour on her hands and salt in her eyes. Her sister stood on the other side. Behind her, their mother, weakened by time, but still carrying that same stern mouth and judging eyes. Her sister whispered, "We heard you were alive." Anna didn't say anything. Her mother's voice cracked, whether from age or pride breaking, Anna didn't know. "You were always too soft, but maybe that's what we needed. Maybe that's what we lost when we threw you away." Anna listened. Ewan came up behind her, resting his hand lightly on her back. 6 children peeked out from the edges of the trees. Her family gasped. "You have children?" Anna stepped outside. She said simply, "No, I have love." And she shut the door behind her. 5. The cabin becomes a school by autumn. Word had spread. There was a woman in the woods who could love children no matter their scars. No matter their story. No matter the shape of their hurt. A widow came, dragging her limp child behind her. A boy with one arm, silent and afraid, was left. On the porch. And then another. And another. The cabin expanded wall by wall. Ewan built with strong hands. The children painted, helped, laughed. Anna taught them letters, stitched their clothes, fed them not just meals but memories. The lumberjack cabin became a school, a home, a sanctuary, and at the center of it all, Anna 6. Full circle years passed. The children grew. One by one, they left some to the army, some to towns beyond the forest, some to families of their own. But each one wrote back. Each one returned for holidays. And each one called her Mama. One snowy night, much like the night she'd been left to die, Anna sat on the porch again, a blanket around her shoulders. The trees were heavy with white. The moon bathed everything in silver. And then, voices. Dozens. Laughter. Boots crunching snow. Children. Grandchildren, their children returning from far and wide. The porch overflowed with hugs and stories. Ewan, now gray, took her hand and kissed it. You gave them what we never had, he said. Anna smiled. No, she whispered. They gave me what I never believed I could have. Final lines, they called her barren. But the world didn't know a womb is only one way to mother. The heart is another. And Anna's heart? It birthed a forest, one that would never die.